One of my favorite things about Nuzlocke is the fact that you're given a bunch of Pokemon and have to figure out how to beat the game with them. In order to get better at that, I wrote a program that generates random challenges for me to beat. The idea behind it is pretty simple. I have to fight a random gym leader with random additional rules to make things much harder than they have to be. For now, I included monotype and monocolor locks, but if you have any other fun ideas, feel free to comment them down below, maybe they'll make it into a future video. On top of the randomly generated challenge, every battle is also following the standard hardcore Nuzlocke rule set on screen right now. Pause if you want to read through them. So, let's jump right into it. Okay, so I have to beat Korrina only using pink Pokemon. The first thing on my list is to get a picture of all my available encounters. The Kalos region has quite a big variety of Pokemon. There is a total of 13 valid mons scattered across the 9 reachable routes up to this point of the game. In order to prevent myself from just picking the best possible ones, I decided to visit every single one of them and let luck decide what team I would end up getting. Let's hunt some Pokemon, shall we? I picked up Venus the Scatterbug in Route 2 and immediately evolved it into a Meadow Pattern Vivillon. The following routes only have one encounter each, and so I added Mars the Skitty, Moon the Hoppip, Jupiter the Audino, Sun the Whismur, and Neptune the Love Disc to my team. Right outside of Sillage City, there are 2 potential encounters for me to pick up. One of them is an Eevee, who I could later evolve into a Sylveon. The other one is a Snubbull, which will evolve into a Purple Granbull. Needless to say that I got the more useless one of the 2. In the Reflection Cave, I then picked up Pluto the Mr. Mime and ultimately got unlucky once again as I got Earth the Execute over all the other much better Pokemon in Route 12. So, with all the encounters locked in place, let's take a look at my opponent. Like all the other Kalos gym leaders, Korrina didn't really have a ton of creativity when it comes to building her team. Her coverage moves are Rock Tomb on Machoke and Flying Press on Hawlucha. Korrina's only way of winning this would be if she somehow managed to set up with Power Punches before I could take her entire team out. Since Generation 6 is one of the easier ones, and to make things a bit fairer on my opponent's side, I also added the additional rule to match her team size for the battle. I had a ton of good options, but ultimately decided to bring Saturn because of his access to Charm and Intimidate, Pluto because of his massive utility with Reflect and Encore, and Venus because of her Stun Spore and high sustain with super effective Draining Kisses. Let's see if I can somehow manage to throw this battle. First up was Saturn into Mienfoo. He immediately lowered his opponent's attack with Intimidate before getting flinched by a Fake Out. To prevent the potential power-up sweep, I decided to lower Mienfoo's attack by 2 stages with Charm twice in a row. From there, I could now safely switch into Pluto, who quad-resists fighting-type moves and takes a solid 1 damage on the switch. After setting up Reflect just to clown on Korrina for a bit, Mr. Mime proceeds to one-shot both Mienfoo and Machoke with a Psybeam crit each. Last came Hawlucha. Its Flying Press barely scratches Pluto, and so 2 more attacks were enough to pick up an easy first win. Hopefully the next challenges are going to be a bit harder than this one. Okay, Morty with only green Pokemon. Let's see what encounters I can get. Since I only have a copy of Soul Silver, I unfortunately am missing out on a lot of good Pokemon for this one. I picked up Venus the Chikorita as my starter, but then quickly ran out of options because the only other team members I could get were a Bellsprout in Route 31 that I named Saturn, and Jupiter the Hoppip from Route 32, who I immediately evolved into a Skiploom. So far, things were looking very dire considering the team I have to go up against. The only way left to get a green Pokemon was to enter the bug catching contest in the national park. I gotta be honest, I don't really know what the encounter rules are in this case. I decided to go for the safe route and stick to the standard encounter rules, which unfortunately resulted in a Metapod. If this was Heart Gold, I could have obtained a Caterpie way before this and then used the Species Clause to hunt for a Cypher here, which would have made a lot of things a lot easier. Unfortunately, I went for the other game, and so I had to learn the hard way that version-exclusive Pokemon are not a fun thing to deal with. Anyway, let's take a look at what I'm going up against. Aside from the huge amount of Pokemon variety, the only other thing that defines Morty's team is the fact that he has a ton of annoying moves. Lick, Curse, Mean Look, Hypnosis, and to top it all off, an extremely hard-hitting Gengar with a Citrus Berry. Without a normal type Pokemon or a bunch of super effective moves, there really doesn't seem to be an easy way through this. As a cherry on top, his entire team also resists all of my attacking moves. Needless to say, that this man sent me home more often than I would like to admit. The challenge is to find a way to beat him though, and so I tried over and over until I finally found a way through. My first winning attempt was heavily dependent on sleep rolls, silly AI decisions, and most of my team died, and that didn't feel right. I decided to take what I had learned so far and try again one last time. Here's how it went. Morty leads the battle with Ghastly, and I bring out Jupiter. Luckily, Jumpluff outspeeds and immediately hits a Sleep Powder and a following Leech Seed. With my setup complete, I now went into Saturn, but Ghastly unfortunately woke up and hit a Lick, which luckily didn't paralyze. Not wanting to get nailed by a Mean Look and Curse combo, I brought Jupiter back in because he was holding the shed skin I won in the buck catching contest earlier. This allowed him to always switch out no matter what. After bringing Ghastly down to the yellow, Morty then wastes his only Hyper Potion, and so it was back to the start. After a long back and forth of Sleep Powder, Bullet Seed and Leech Seed chip damage, Ghastly finally went down, which then brings out Morty's ace Gengar. It went for a Sucker Punch, which failed as Jumpluff puts yet another scary ghost to sleep. After setting up a Leech Seed once again, Gengar woke up only to miss a Hypnosis. I put my opponent back to sleep and brought out Venus. Thanks to the continuous damage from Leech Seed, my opponent's Citrus Berry now activates, bringing it almost back to full. On the next turn, Gengar got a lucky sleep roll once again and woke up, forcing Venus to tank a Sucker Punch before retaliating with a strong Magical Leaf. I then tried to switch in Mars to potentially stall out the ace until Leech Seed finishes it off, but he just went down to a single Shadow Ball. Not a big deal, he wasn't allowed to evolve anyway. It was back to Venus, who after another Hypnosis miss, was able to pick up the KO with Magical Leaf and Leech Seed chip damage. With that, the battle was as good as over. Morty sends out his Hypnosis and Dream Eater Haunter next, but all I had to do was wait for Leech Seed to do its job. The final Haunter only has Sucker Punch and Nightshade, and so easily was taken care of as well. That was definitely a hard challenge to overcome. If you ever want to do a green monocolor lock in this generation, please do yourself a favor and pick Heart Gold instead. Let's see what my final challenge is going to be. I know I said I wanted challenges to be a bit harder after easily sweeping Korrina, but this is not what I meant. I don't know who would ever attempt a ground-only challenge in Sinnoh, but hey, the goal is to get better, so let's see what we're dealing with. I learned from my mistakes and actually looked at what game would be best to beat this challenge in. After some research, I ended up picking Platinum because it allows me to get a Gible before Gym 4. Up to this point, there is a total of 5 different ground-type Pokemon I can get. Venus the Geodude from the Orbor Gate, Mercury the Onix from the Orbor Mine, Neptune the Shellos from the Valley Windworks, Mars the Gligar from Route 6, and last but definitely not least, Moon the Gible from the Wayward Cave. The reason why I picked up Shellos is because the level cap of 32 allowed me to evolve her right before the gym. This gives her the secondary ground type, making her a valid encounter for the run. With that, all I needed to do was to pray that Maylene's Pokemon would miss all of their moves so I can pick up a win first try. Just kidding. Well, okay, things really don't look too great for me here. I didn't want to repeat the mistakes I made when attempting Morty and actually sat down to plan this battle. The main obstacles to overcome were Maylene's annoying Meditite and her ace Lucario, who could increase its attack with Metal Claw and heal back all damage with Drain Punch. Machoke was also a potential threat, but not nearly as much as the other two. I did my best to find a strategy to get through this and jumped right into the fight. I start the battle off with Moon into Maylene's Meditite. Since it was guaranteed to fake out first, I brought in Mercury to tank the hit and set up Sandstorm before getting brought to half by a Drain Punch. Mercury then unfortunately missed a Screech before surviving another attack on a Sliver. He then luckily connects to lower Meditite's defense and then gets sacrificed to the Great Gods. This allowed me to freely bring out Moon next, who outspeeds, and thanks to Mercury's setup, easily picks up a KO with a Shadow Claw. Next up was Lucario, who then hit a Drain Punch for about 50% before losing 1/3 of its own HP to a Dragon Rage. My original plan was to switch out now, but since Drain Punch was a low roll, I decided to risk a crit and stay in for another attack. A Force Palm then hit Moon down to 9 HP and paralyzed him, but he pulled through and brought Lucario down to the red with another Dragon Rage. With that, it was time to switch into the God of War, Mars. He easily shrugs off a Drain Punch and Metal Claw before finishing Maylene's ace with a Rock Smash. Last was Machoke, and so it was straight into Gastrodon on a Rock Tomb. Since it was only using Strength for some reason, all there was left to do was to spam Water Pulse and watch Machoke KO itself in confusion. Nice, that went surprisingly better than I thought. And that's it. This was a lot of fun to make, and I would definitely be interested to do more Nuzlocke challenge videos in the future. If you enjoyed it as well, please let me know in the comments down below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe and check out my other videos. Thanks for watching.